Good morning, good evening, everybody from wherever you have joined us. Welcome to the Thai Sustainability Summit, the largest summit hosted by Thai Hyderabad. I'm Shanti, and I'm the program director for this summit. As a professional, I work in the areas of change facilitation and process standardization, usually with organizations having large multi-stakeholder groups. It's indeed been an humbling experience to work on this summit. And with 40,000 registrations and more, it's a testimony of all the efforts of the leadership and the team. And we are very excited to bring you insightful and inspirational sessions. Our next session is on the value of waste. And we have a wonderful set of speakers from diverse backgrounds. What is the value of waste? Well, recycling has been a part of our urban lexicon for decades, and yet economics of circularity remain a challenge. Nilda Mesa, Director of Urban Sustainability and Equity Planning Program at the Earth Institute Center for Sustainable Urban Development said, if there is not a market for recycled material, then the numbers do not work for the facilities as well as the cities. To talk more about this, let me introduce to you the moderator, Dr. Victoria Wu. Dr. Victoria Wu is the founder of Reset Mindset. As a serial entrepreneur with almost 30 years of experience in startups, international management, and academia, she teaches entrepreneurship at the Stanford University at the Department of Management, Science, and Engineering. During the past decade, she spent most of her time in Asia, where her focus has been working on bridging the academia and the business communities by co-designing custom executive programs at INSEAD and Harvard. There, she helps Fortune 500 clients curate learning journeys for the CXO level leaders, senior leaders, and high potential managers. She has also facilitated dialogue and cooperation among worldwide business partners, school alumni, and corporate clients. Currently, she devotes her time in producing content for entrepreneurship and sustainability. Welcome, Dr. Wu.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning for me out here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I'm delighted to be moderating this panel on waste. You know, the common phrase is rubbish denotes that, rubbish just has no value whatsoever. Yet increasingly, we're finding waste not only has value, but an important ingredient and a regenerative resource in our supply chain to produce goods and services in an ever so circular economy. I would like to introduce my panelists now. It's an all-female co-founded or founded companies, global glamorous team of people to talk about the value of waste. I'll start with the founder of Fermenstation, Lina, Sakai. Fermenstation is a sustainable material company manufacturing alcohol from food wastes. Tamara Mekler is founder of Fortuna Cool's upcycling agricultural waste to replace plastic foam insulation to keep food fresh and oceans healthy. Founder of NewGen Surgical develops upcycled plant-based clinically designed products for healthcare, Kim Chase, and founder of Waste Development, Taylor Zehren. Waste development is a circular sanitation economy that transforms human waste into eco-fertilizer, sourcing input through reimagined portable toilets focused on an improved experience. Taylor, would you like to say a few words and say hello to our audience today? A little bit more about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Vic, and thank you all for having me here today. So as she mentioned, waste development is focused on reclaiming resources from human byproducts. And it's a really exciting time in our company. I'm actually calling in from the state of Vermont this morning, where this week we are running our first field beta testing of our new reimagined portable toilets here. So really excited to get out in the field and continue building the circular sanitation economy.
Great. Tamara?
Hi everyone, I'm Tamara Mekler. I'm the co-founder and COO of Fortuna. And as Vic was mentioning, what we do is make coolers out of coconuts. So we use this leftover agricultural waste product, which is the coconut husk, and we make insulation out of it to replace plastic foam. I'm calling in from Madrid, and I'm really excited to be on this panel with other people who are upcycling waste and giving it a new life.
Awesome. Lina?
Hi, I'm Lina from Fermenstation. I'm calling in. It's midnight. I'm in Tokyo from Japan. I'm so excited to be here. And what Fermenstation do is basically we have a fermentation technology based on technology of making sake, but we change food waste such as apple peels or banana scraps or the fruits that people don't eat anymore. We take that, we ferment, we make alcohol and use the material for cosmetics. Basically, it's the waste-free business that we're doing. I'm so excited to talk about the waste that will be upcycled and will give values. Thank you.
All right, Kim?
Hi, I am the co-founder and CMO of NewGen Surgical, a company based in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I am today. We use upcycled agricultural byproduct of the sugarcane harvest, and it's called bagasse, for reimagining the many commodity single-use products used in the surgical operating theater. I want to thank you for having us here today at conferences like this. For any of us founders who put a lot of hours in, give us great hope and inspiration to know that so many people are coming together to work on these critical issues facing the world. So thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for your introductions. Kim, while we have you on, would you tell us what inspired you to start this company?
Do you have an hour? No, I'm kidding. Well,
almost an hour, but you shouldn't take up the whole thing.
I won't take the whole hour. Well, actually, we had a company I co-founded with my husband before this, a medical products company, Pacific Cardiac Solutions, and we worked with surgeons and technical perioperative staff, and we all had a shared concern about the waste coming out of the OR. So we were blessed with a third son late in life, and we were at dinner and we said, what can we do about the world? We don't like the way this is all going. And so we came up with the idea of looking at new materials to replace plastic. And plastic, as we know, is one of the greatest issues facing planet problems and ecological destruction. So we were sitting at dinner and we designed our logo and NewGen Surgical, and we knew a lot about the market and decided to go from there. For me personally, it brought it full circle. I've been working environmentally, I think, since the 70s when I raised money for the Fresh Air Fund, because I have a twin sister who has respiratory problems. And we also grew up in one of those areas that are most affected by industrial practices, which we talk about today with the health inequities with people across the world. Most of what we're all working to change is helping people most affected by climate and environmental practices, industrial practices. So
let's go with Taylor. Tell us what inspires you to start this very unusual company for such a I mean, I had never thought about portable toilets before as a part of the circular economy, but indeed it is.
Yeah, I think if you had told me in my undergraduate studies studying biochemistry that I'd be working in toilets, I probably would have laughed at you, but here we are. So I first became really passionate about sanitation while I was doing a Fulbright scholarship and climbing mountains in the Argentine Patagonia. And I just kind of kept, this was back in 2017, and I just kept running into sanitation issues over and over again. And a lot of questions started entering my mind as to why. And seeing it a lot in the outdoor, I'm a big climber and mountaineer, and it was a lot of in the outdoor spaces. And that actually led our team to found a nonprofit called Do Good Shit. And that nonprofit was oriented to implement dignified and environmentally friendly sanitation solutions in outdoor recreation areas and their adjacent communities. And that work really became a classroom to learn about the larger global sanitation issues that we face. And as our design problems became more complex, we were doing projects in Latin America, in Nepal, all over the world, and we started to see more and more complex design issues, and our stakeholders started asking us a lot about ecological sanitation or the reuse or reintroduction of byproducts. And so I really started to see the potential of ecological sanitation and really wanted to facilitate safe practices in our stakeholders. And I think the more that we explored that pathway and the more that we discovered the amazing science that was happening and the amazing technological innovations, we just really saw a place to disrupt an industry that a lot of people don't want to touch. And a lot of people are really stuck in an old paradigm with sanitation. And we just became, the team at Waste Development became really, really excited and passionate about trying to shift that paradigm and affect change in a space where not a lot of people want to go. So yeah, here we are, working in toilets. Here we are.
Excellent. So why don't we go to Lina next?
Yeah,
What inspired you to start your company?
Yeah, first, when I started my career, I used to work for financial institutions like large Japanese bank, and then I used to work for a Deutsche Bank and working like all day, 24 hours, and didn't have much time to sleep, and I kind of liked the job, but I worked too much and I got sick, and then I realized I'm doing this for like who? And I kind of liked the job, but I started to think that if I devote so much time to work, I should do something that only myself can do. And then I started to think about that, what do I want to do? And then I realized that while I was doing like a project finance and the big infrastructure project, I had some interest in the environmental issues, and also the business that achieve both the business success and at the same time giving the impact to the like a social and community stuff. And then that was when I learned about the Ben & Jerry's and that kind of company. I got so excited. I want to do something like this, but no ice cream. And I was always searching for something that I really want to do. And then one day I was watching television, and on television, there was a professor talking about the technology that can change the food waste into bioethanol. So I thought, this sounds exciting. This is something I should do. And then I quit the bank and started to join like high school kid. I was over 30 something, but I quit the bank and joined the college again to learn about fermentation. And that was when I was ready to make biofuel from waste. But while I was doing, I realized there is no way I can make money just making alcohol from waste, because there's always a cost issues. And then I realized that alcohol can also be used as a material for cosmetics, and I thought this might be something that I can give values, and that's how I started my business.
Yeah, so from actually food waste to a beauty product, that's quite a journey.
It's something that I never imagined before.
Well, I think of the panelists, I think Taylor also said something similar, that she had never imagined that she would be working on this, but it has so much meaning. And today's world, I think the more we can embrace circularity in any way possible and reduce waste, we are hoping to solve some of the grand challenges that we have today. So Tamara, tell us about how you came into doing something with coconut husks.
Yeah, I also didn't necessarily imagine myself working on that, but We actually started out as a graduate student project. So that was back when my co-founder and I were graduate students at Stanford University, and we spent a lot of time at the design school. And we were actually working on a project that was established as a partnership with the marine conservation NGO called RARE. And the goal really was to improve the livelihood of small-scale fishermen in the Philippines. And so we spent a lot of time learning about the seafood industry and some of the challenges that the actors in that sector were facing. A lot of time living with fishermen and learning from their practices. And at the same time, as we were traveling across the country, visiting these different fishing communities, we also kept driving through coconut farms and seeing all these huge piles of coconut husk waste. So it really piqued our curiosity, and we started experimenting with the material and sort of bringing those two worlds, or those two major industries that are two of the biggest industries in the Philippines, together. Working on coolers, so primarily for the fishing industry, that were made out of this coconut waste material. And it really was thanks to all the enthusiasm and support that we got from these original, these first users, these fishing communities across the Philippines, that really inspired us to continue to do this work, and post-graduation to turn this class project into a social enterprise to support those rural communities, and essentially to build a better product for people in the fishing industry. We had identified a problem by living and working in the fisheries sector, and we saw an opportunity to build something better for them. So yeah.
Wow, so you've combined some ethnographic research, because you went out to actually the field to see the piles of coconut husks that were left over, and they're being burnt, so that means carbon into the atmosphere. And also the farmers are not getting the fishermen are not getting the best price, because the fish is not also getting as fresh as they can from where they're coming from to the consumers that are paying a high price. I know that at Whole Foods, a very popular fish could run $20 a pound.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much of that is going back to the fishermen.
Just a fraction.
It's just a fraction of it. So Tamara, while we have you on, the problem you're tackling is really reducing waste, but also to preserve fish. Tell us how you think you might be able to scale this technology that you're developing, and tell us a little bit more about the technology. How does it work? How does coconut husk all of a sudden become a replacement for styrofoam that we commonly see as we ship seafood from one place to another?
Yeah. So our goal really, and the problem that we're trying to solve, is that we're trying to build a better cooler, and that's to replace the plastic alternatives, and in particular to replace plastic foam insulation like polystyrene or styrofoam. And when we say that we're building a better cooler, we're really addressing two problems with the existing options. So one of them is obviously the material, one of the major ones. So plastic foam is actually not even the best insulator out there, but it's the most prevalent one because it's very light and it's very cheap. The problem is that those two qualities that make it the most preferred solution also make it really bad for the environment. If you've ever sort of looked inside of an igloo cooler, or if you've ever received a shipment in a styrofoam box, you know how annoying those materials can be, how easily they break apart. They end up being tiny beads of plastic that blow away, they stack up in landfills, they find their way to the ocean, and eventually this plastic is polluting both on land and at sea. It's for generations. And so meanwhile, we also have these coconut husks, which are also a waste. They're the leftover waste of the huge and growing coconut industry. And in fact, there are billions and billions of coconut husks that are burned as waste every year, and that's just in the Philippines. And so, as you were mentioning, that releases tons of CO2 into the atmosphere because it's primarily carbon. It also produces a lot of unhealthy smoke that is bad for the farmers. They actually just build these piles of waste and they burn it at the farm. And also it's just wasting a really great resource. The coconut husk was designed by nature to keep stuff cool and protected. If you've ever drank water directly from a coconut, you probably were surprised at how refreshing and cold it was. And that's because, nature has been perfecting that insulation for centuries. And yet we are treating it as waste. And so instead of wasting that resource, we're buying that from small-scale farmers, which means that we're providing them with an additional source of income, obviously avoiding all those CO2 emissions and replacing polluting plastics in the process. And so that's one of the benefits, let's say, the material. But there's besides this material improvement, we're also just creating a better cooler altogether from a design and user experience perspective. Most coolers out there, and that's because in building a sustainable product, we knew that we couldn't just make that the key selling point. If it's not a better product altogether, why would people be choosing this? Yes. And also, if it's not a great product, a useful product, a durable product, then it actually doesn't end up being sustainable in the long term. Right. And so, most coolers out there, they're bulky, they're heavy. You really don't know what to do with it when you're not using it, don't have a place to put it. Soft cooler bags in the consumer cooler industry try to address that problem, but most of the time it's actually by compromising on the insulation performance. And so what we're doing with our natural coolers is creating a collapsible design. So it can be folded flat for easy storage, can be carried over the shoulder for convenience, and all of that while keeping ice frozen for more than 48 hours, which is longer than the likes of Coleman and Yeti coolers like the Hopper. And so, it's really about providing that better product altogether, a better product made with better materials. And there's a whole world of opportunities out there with this material in a whole line of consumer products that we're excited about building, and also really excited potential in the insulated packaging market.
Excellent. Well, that segues perfectly into Kim, who had spent a lot of time in research and development. Kim, if you can unmute yourself and tell us a story about what is bagasse and what does bagasse do? For those who are not familiar with the operating room, there are a lot of equipment, if Kim can tell us more about that, that's disposable, which means plastic goes straight into some sort of a waste stream that is not often recycled. We had talked about, you were looking for a byproduct of a waste stream so that the crop itself is not to make your product. So tell us about that whole journey, your small change, big impact theory that's behind that.
Okay. Well, the first 2 years of our company were spent on looking at materials because this is a highly regulated space, the OR, and to maintain efficacy and sterilization, cytotoxicity, all of the things that you need and want in the operating room, you needed to find those in a sustainable material. So we ended on bagasse, which is an upcycled material, because it could maintain 100% efficacy on hundreds of single-use products used in the OR. And to just put perspective on the size of the problem, 85% of all medical supplies are plastic. And the healthcare industry represents 2.2 gigatons of CO2e, with 5 million tons of plastic waste per year. If healthcare were a country measured with environmental impact, it would be the 5th largest. So this is the problem we're attacking with our products, which are made with this upcycled material. We have a program called Small Change, Big Impact, which measures the built-in carbon and plastic elimination with your product choices. And I think this is a great way for people, and it helped our customers visualize what is the measurable, scientific, and meaningful impact that they can have. With just in the US alone, there's 36 million surgical procedures per year. Our products, we have 6 product lines, can be used in every single one one of our hospitals just changed out one product, and it's going to be 500 tons of plastic,
Wow.
which and I think that I was looking up what that, it has an equivalency carbon in our calculator as well, which I think was 15,000 metric tons of carbon. So imagine if all surgical procedures across the world just change one product, it would have a measurable and meaningful impact. But taking a waste product and upcycling it into something that could be put in a surgeon's hands and surgical was quite the developmental journey. So we
I
have
bet.
that. Yeah. So we have that figured out, and it's part of what we call the biological circular economy. There's a technical, which keeps things in reuse, and then there's a biological, which ours can be returned to. Some of our products are compostable or biodegradable, and then the ones that will always be single use, always be waste, because they're sharps, they're biocontaminated, at least they won't be around forever. Every piece of plastic, there is no way, it's still here. So ours will, even in that waste stream, once go away. So, and that's what we want to do. Healthcare, is meant to save lives and have healthy outcomes for people, and using plastic doesn't really fit in with the first do no harm. In production alone, there's 148 chemicals of concern. Each one of us listening to this today or participating, we're all eating a credit card's worth of plastic, and newborn babies are born with plastic particles in their umbilical cord. So this is something we need to change across all industries, and we call it smart sustainable design, because all of our products have built-in carbon. I hate to use the word footprint, but it's a good word for it. It has a built-in carbon. So we need to redesign, and using waste material that isn't taking food from people. So some people are growing crops to make a bioplastic, and with 1 in 9 people going to bed every night hungry, and with the world's population expected to grow to 10 billion by 2050, and that being a 400%, we won't have enough resources for everybody. We all need to look at what is the value of waste, what can we make with it, and keep things in use.
Yes. Well, that's a great, thank you, Kimberly. That's a great segue to perhaps Lina, who's going to take, I know that you started out making ethanol from the byproduct of sake, which is one of my favorite drinks, first of all. And now you are venturing out into other waste streams. Can you tell us about the apple peels and the other byproduct of making food that we buy from the store in order to make your alcohol for beauty products?
Okay, thanks. As you mentioned, first we started from rice, and actually the leftover of sake, yes, and also at the same time, Japanese people eat less rice, we eat more pasta and bread, and actually rice field, it's everywhere, but actually 1/3 or 40% of rice paddy is not utilized at all. So that's one issue. So first we started from the idea of making better use of rice paddies, and that's how we started to make alcohol from rice. But by doing that, we started to hear from other people like rice is good, but at the same time, there's a lot of like food waste and stuff you might be able to use. And then we realized that we have that technology. So first, that we started to have apple peels, the residue from the apple ciders and the juice and stuff. And we fermented and made alcohol and realized, wow, it smelled so good. With our technology, it's not just the same alcohol. The alcohol you usually use it smells really like the hospital, right? And it has a good function, but also sometimes it's so itchy to your skin. But with our technology, it smells really nice, but it also has a functionality, and that's how we started to make better use of the other waste as well. And as Kim mentioned, some alcohol are made from petrochemical stuff, and at the same time, in the crops like corn and sugarcane, it's something some people should be use as to eat. So we thought, why don't we make better use of the waste we have? So that's how we started to make use of the good the food and waste and stuff. But when we started to make alcohol and start to sell, but first it was too expensive and almost nobody wanted to buy it. Nobody had ever seen like the traceable alcohol. Because alcohol is everywhere and it's cheap. But so we realized we have to not just being traceable or the sustainable, we also at the same time have to have some functionality or the reason people wanted to buy. So first we started from alcohol, but at the same time we started to make better use of the residue of making alcohol, and realize it has lots of good functionality to your skin and stuff. But still, that was not enough. So then we have to prove ourselves and started to make the products, not just selling the material, but we started to have our own brand, Fermenstation, and we use our alcohol and make into like cosmetics and aroma spray, hand spray, and making facial soaps from the leftover to show people, to make proof that our sustainable alcohol can be a good like business or the good material for people. So that's how we started, and that's how we wanted to scale our business.
And I understand you also partner with streams of waste, and it becomes a supplier for other products that can be made from it. You're creating some sort of a platform to make that matchmaking. Is that also correct?
Yes, you're right. First, we were taking the apple peels or the bananas from one company and made alcohol and made into hand wipes and stuff and giving back to them. But that wasn't enough because, there's tons of apple peels everywhere. But it's better that, everybody's waste should be used by everybody. And sometimes the fashion brand or the people who don't have the waste want to use a good use of the waste. So right now we're trying to be a platform and to connect people who have the waste or the people who want to make use of the waste.
Excellent. Well, that segues also into Taylor. If you can unmute yourself, tell us about we talk about liquid gold facetiously, and that becomes an eco-fertilizer. Can you tell us the process of how that works and how you're working with these portable toilets to do the capture and processing of this liquid gold that you're working on with Wasted?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the core of the problem we're solving, everybody eats and everybody poops. And I think that but at the same time, there are a lot of really unsustainable practices behind that. So, in the US alone, we flush 1.2 trillion gallons of potable water down toilets every year. Our treatment processes are very energy intensive and expensive with a lot of off-gassing problems. And our agricultural system is reliant on harmful synthetic fertilizers that are depleting finite natural resources. And so, we kind of look at that landscape, and we're starting with portable sanitation because, one, we don't have to compete with below ground sewage systems to do so. We're able to enter a marketplace that's already pretty lucrative with a product with a horrible user experience, for those of you familiar with the Blue Box Porta Potty. So it's one that we can disrupt and kind of immediately see economic gains from, but then also, our end goal is, and it allows us to capture waste that would already be in transport in pump trucks, right? So we can collect urine, bring it back to a resource facility that way. So that's kind of the hack to source the input of this liquid gold. But on our migration path, we're really hoping to scale and abstract out that technology and get it in a wider variety of settings. And so you can think of commercial buildings and pretty much anywhere where people are peeing, we're able to collect that resource and then bring it back to a resource reclamation facility where we're able to manipulate the chemistry with ion exchange or electrochemical stripping, these processes where we can claim urine is super rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, macronutrients that are core to all of the fertilizers that we use in commercial agriculture right now. And so we can manipulate that chemistry into the appropriate fertilizers and soil amendments to then have a meaningful impact in agriculture as well. And so, we really think about moving towards a framework with an integrated management of human waste, soil, and water. Our toilets are dry toilets. And so really thinking of that framework as one that can also be replicated. Like, we're starting in kind of the premium sector of the porta potty industry here, but this is a framework of integrated management that I hope to become a kind of standard that could replace our idea that everyone needs to have, flushing toilets with these massive wastewater treatment facilities and below ground sewage. I don't think that is necessarily the end all be all. And so really developing a framework here that can also have impact on the larger global sanitation crisis.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the stakeholders that you'll be engaging in order to make this happen. Because I can understand that you will have a lot of pushback from the waste water management companies. They're behemoth corporations already with a huge business. As a consumer, I can imagine pushing back, but how will you work with your stakeholders in order for you to become, sustainable and economically successful?
Yeah. Like I said, that's one of the reasons why we started in portable sanitation and in the porta potty sector in our go-to-market strategies. But we also, I think it's really important to note that ecological sanitation has been around for generations and generations. This is not something that we're inventing. There's also a lot of really amazing academics and organizations doing a lot of work in the processes of resource reclamation from human waste. And so I think a lot of the role of waste development is really upholding the work of those stakeholders and amplifying that message. And so, for example, right now here in Vermont, we're running this pilot in collaboration with a strategic partner called Rich Earth Institute that has been using community collection and deployment of urine with local farms here for a decade, and they have really amazing groundwork laid and really amazing farmer relationships. And so I think it's really about uniting these kind of siloed sanitation efforts, uniting them and facilitating the growth and commercialization of these processes. And inevitably there is policy work to be done in order to really pave the path to scaling this technology. But I think that is part of that facilitation that we're going to take on in the industry. And it's just so amazing to look at the work people are doing. We have a scientific council of scientists at Stanford and Cape Town, and people making all sorts of commodity chemicals, growing bio bricks, exploring how to power hydrogen fuel cells with urine. I mean, there's so much exciting inspirational possibility, and we just want to really uphold that work that our stakeholders are doing.
Great. Well, speaking of stakeholders, Tamara, tell us about how are you working with farmers? Are you working, one region at a time? How do you think about, from farming to the supply chain of people using styrofoam boxes or coolers to ship their products from, where they're produced and or harvested to where they need to go to be consumed?
Yeah, so sort of similar to what Taylor was describing, that we found these strategic partners that already had incredible networks built and sort of collaborated with them from day one. So we actually were super lucky to find a coconut fiber processor in a region, in one of the largest coconut growing regions of the Philippines. And we've been partnered with them pretty much from the very beginning for a couple of years now. And it was a super collaborative process. So from the first day, we were building prototypes together, exploring everything that we could do with this material, testing the insulation performance, testing some of the other characteristics of this material, and really capitalizing on all of the work that these manufacturers had been doing in that community, building a really robust supply network from these small-scale farmers in the region, and having already sort of built this supply chain of raw material supply coming directly from the farms and establishing those local relationships, and really collaborating with that team to be building our products. And that's sort of the attitude that we've had towards all of our stakeholder relationships. So I mentioned that we started out through, we started out as a project with fisherfolk, and those fisherfolk actually turned out to be our very first users. And we actually call them our co-designers because they're the ones who came up with a lot of the features that we ended up incorporating into our coolers. And so, the best way that we could find to build the best possible product was by building prototypes early on and testing them very often and hearing this feedback from the users themselves. So we had dairy distributors who were taking our coolers to trade fairs, or seafood retailers who were packing frozen fish inside our coolers, or even friends taking our coolers out on their kayak or on a camping trip. And from each of those users, we would get a ton of feedback. So the collapsibility feature, for example, which is one of our key distinguishing factors right now, came from fisherfolk that were taking out our cooler to sea, and then we were sort of seeing how they were moving around the boat and the space constraint, and so things like that came directly from this collaborative approach. I think it's been thanks to that attitude and to that continuous collaboration, really with all stakeholders, not just with our users, but with our manufacturers, with our advisors, with our material suppliers, with our industrial designers. And in the end, we ended up with a whole community of people who felt so included in the process and so invested in our success that we've been able to build a really supportive community of partners, advisors, early adopters, and that's how we've been able to grow so far.
Well, I think your story is similar to Taylor's. There are a lot of energy that's put into designing your product in order to satiate the stakeholders and offer them a benefit and an incentive structure for behavioral change at the end of the day, right? So let me jump over to Kimberly. I know that you and I were talking about this new kind of position called the Sustainable Director at Healthcare Systems, and how their job is really looking after, yes, we provide healthcare, but beyond that, are we practicing what we say we're practicing, which is providing a healthy ecosystem and environment for our patients. So can you talk a little bit more about the stakeholder that you're working with? You're working with large hospital systems to change the way, you said, if they use just make that one change, it would be a huge impact on the environment. Kimberly, you're muted.
Apologies. That is one of our stakeholders, is to work with a sustainability team at the hospital. But it's a long and winding road to get the product into the OR. That's just one stakeholder. We have many within healthcare being highly regulated. But paramount to the adoption of these products is having our advisory and our board be part of the healthcare industry. So physicians, surgeons, perioperative advisory panel that uses the products and has ideas for the products. Working with sustainability groups at the hospital, they are in charge of mission and ESG goals for their system. So we may get approval, and indeed they spearhead oftentimes getting our product into even being considered by, say, a value analysis committee, which of course, when we're talking about the polystyrene and its inexpense, there are trays used in surgery and the surgical packs that are polystyrene, and it's very hard to compete with that penny product that is actually costing the planet dearly, right? But our largest stakeholder that we need to deal with is even getting approval with all of this. It all ends up at a large distributor, of which there are only a few large globally that put together surgical kits. Most surgeries that you go into, the surgeon or the team gets a sterilized kit for that procedure, and getting your product into that kit is the stakeholder that we mostly have to deal with, because we could get top down, yes, from a healthcare system, including the sustainability director, and the doctor and the nurse, and we run a great trial, and it could be 2 years, and then it gets to the one person or company actually putting together that surgical sterile pack. And, you know, that's a big industry to disrupt. It is a, no pun intended, well-oiled machine based on plastic products that they get for pennies and charge a lot of money for, which of course, we all know the cost of healthcare. So anyway, that is our stakeholder story. Does that kind of answer your
Yeah. So Lina, if you can unmute yourself, your stakeholders are dwindling use of rice so that the farmers are getting less. You've got this pile of waste or apple peels and what have you that you're dealing with. How are you working with each of these stakeholders to one measure to make it available and transporting of this waste material to where it could be used? Can you tell us about how that works within your organization or your platform?
Okay, first we have like crazy amount of stakeholders. It's just so exciting. And that's what we always talk about. Because one morning we talk with the rice farmers, and also all of our residues are basically used as a feed for like hen and cattle. So we work with these kind of people, and also we work with like large corporations. Like for example, bananas are coming from one of the largest corporation, like airplane company, ANA. So we work with the large corporations, you know, like, and sometimes the government people, but actually most of the clients, they're like fashion brands and people who, you know, don't actually talk about logic, but the people who, you know, have like the nice ideas and, you know, the word and phrase and, you know, the way they work, it's so different that, you know, everything is just so different, and it's tough, but it's fun. And only the people who think it's fun are the member of the Fermenstation. But the one thing that we really stick, that we think is so important, is we always try to make sure that everybody gets the good part. You know, everybody gets the feedback, like not just feeling, but the financials. Or you know, the both business impact and the social impact, everybody has to have the both. So it's so tough, you know. We always have to look at everybody and make sure people are happy, and also we have to balance ourselves and balance the people, because sometimes we might get tons of apple residues, but unless we make sure the residues are used as a feed, you know, we have to have enough like hen and cattle. So sometimes it's tough, you know, but
that's why we have innovators like you to solve some of these issues and problems. And I see that we might be coming towards the end of the panel. So I don't know if we have time, Shanti, for this last question, which is, what is one question we should have asked you panelists and didn't? And please state your question and provide us with an answer. Taylor, do you want to go first? Unmute yourself.
Yes, hello. Yeah, I think that one exciting question is, how can you follow along with this journey? Like, we're building in public right now, and we are just now testing our technology and going through all of the exciting trials and tribulations. And so if you want to follow along, if you want to get involved, we're always looking for advisors and people to plug in. So we have a contact form on our website, reach out directly. It's definitely an exciting time to be working in sanitation. So yeah.
Awesome. Maybe Tamara?
Sure. I guess I think it's technically a question you already asked, but you asked me a little bit more about the technical aspect of this coconut husk fiber as an insulator, and I think I didn't really answer that. And so, yeah, it's just it's a super cool material. Coconut husk fibers have tons of tiny pockets of air that slow down heat conduction, and so it's really this trapped air that works as the insulator. And it's really the same mechanism that other insulators like wool and plastic function through. And so actually, if you look at coconut husk fiber under a microscope and compare it to wool or like styrofoam, it looks essentially the same. But obviously, coconut husk fibers are biodegradable and antimicrobial and anti-water resistant and just a ton of amazing properties. And so, yeah, super cool material. Feel like I had to share that.
It sounds like maybe we could start using coconut husk to make coats instead of using, the puffy jackets. It'll be like a puffy coconut jacket.
Yeah, a bit spiky, but yeah.
It might be a little bit spiky, but I'm sure we can work with the material. So Kim, if you can unmute yourself, what is one question I should have asked but didn't? State your question and please answer.
Well, I think what I would like to do is ask a question of everyone. And it's two questions that I just want to leave everyone with. I read it somewhere and I wish I could remember the author, because all of us are working on this critical issue of health for people and planet. And one question, I keep in mind all of the time, and we need to ask of everyone, is if not us, who? And if not now, when? And that would be the final thought I would want to leave with everyone across the world, because we are at a critical time, but an exciting time, an innovative time. And we all are having impact and making a difference. And so that's not a question, but a question.
Well, there are two questions that we should all be asking ourselves. As a matter of fact, my team and I named us Reset is because we are all responsible for our own sustainable future. So last but not least, Lina, what is one question I should have asked but didn't? Please state your question and answer.
Thank you for the opportunity. When I give pitches, I'm always being asked, what you're doing, great, but will actually people buy because it's good for the earth or, the society? People may buy stuff if it's good for you, but not for other reasons. But my answer always the same. I'm hoping the day will come, and we want to make the market like that. People may buy things, and it might be a little bit expensive now, but people may buy not just because it's good for you, but because it's good for other people or the community or the society. It's something that we think we want to do.
Yes. Well, I do believe that the generation that's, 20-something-year-olds, which includes maybe Taylor and Tamara, we are much more conscious consumers these days. And I think having a label that denotes the difference that you will be contributing to planet perhaps will help all of us make better choices as consumers. So Shanti, thank you so much, my panelists, for joining us today.
Thank you. I think your personal stories are really inspiring, each one of you. A trek and, a visit to the Philippines, a hospitalization, and I don't know, it's just so fascinating that, I'm going to cherish this. I'm glad I joined you all. And I do have questions about your market strategies and who are your clients and so many other things, but I think we'll reach out to you personally on that. And so there are two things that struck me. I said, buy products that are good, not just for you, but for the planet. So that is something I'm going to take away with me. And what Kimberly said, if not us, who? And if not now, when? So that is the essence of this Sustainability Summit. And we hope we all work and we are all influenced at least a tiny bit to, and live and stay with this question, if not us, who? If not now, when? Thank you so much.